So the first thing we want to talk about is turning VoiceOver on and off. And the easiest way to do that, of course, would be to ask Siri to turn it on or off, right? And the next question would be, when do I need it on or off? Now, I have VoiceOver on all the time because that fits my needs with my vision. You may not need it on all the time, and that's okay too. Again, you can ask Siri to just turn it on when you need it, do what you need to do, and ask Siri to turn it off when you're done. Let's give a scenario that might be useful for, let's say that you have enough vision, or you can use Siri to open any app on your phone. So you could ask Siri to open your emails. And then you might have your phone adjusted enough to have magnification on or bold text on, or however you have that set up visually. And you can navigate down your list of emails and see who they're from. And you get a message, an email from your friend Sarah. So you open it up and you see enough to even read her message. Hi, I just saw this article on penguins and I thought you'd love it. Check it out. And then there's a link, and you can even see to tap on the link and open that up. And all of a sudden, it's a 50-page article all about penguins. And even though you love penguins, you might not like a 50-page article because you might have eye fatigue, eye strain. You might think, oh, I'm going to take a whole week to just read a few pages of this at a time. Or you might even just say, forget it, I'm not going to read it. But this is a point in time where you could turn VoiceOver on and then use the tips we're going to talk about today to navigate, to read that article, to hear it, right? We still speak visually saying we read it, but you're really going to use your VoiceOver gestures and hear the article. And when you're done, you could simply ask Siri to turn off VoiceOver. So it's good for those types of scenarios if you need to use it temporarily. Certainly, there are other methods to access text-to-speech and things like that. But for today's purposes, this is lesson 1 on an introduction to VoiceOver. And that is a successful method and a quick method sometimes on how to be able to have access to articles and other material that you might struggle with reading. And again, it's a full spectrum all the way from a lot of usable vision to no vision, and you need VoiceOver on all the time. It's all about what fits your scenario. Okay, so with that, let's go into the settings and I'll show you what I like to call the long way of knowing where VoiceOver is, and also we'll get into making some adjustments to settings. That means we're going to want our settings app. You could ask Siri to open it. Or you can find the gears or listen, and if you already have VoiceOver on, you touch settings.
Games folder, settings.
Okay, so I'm going to open that up. I'll get into gestures in a bit. So we'll open that up. And
settings, heading.
Okay, now that said settings, heading. So we know we're in our settings. A heading is simply a sign of where we're located. So it could be if you were in, Target or Walmart or wherever, and they have the signs, they say women's apparel or men's apparel, men's shoes. Those are just headings where you are. So this said settings heading. That's where I am. So I've got to find my accessibility options. So for me, I already have VoiceOver on. I will reiterate when we really dig into gestures, but I'm going to flick to the right until I hear accessibility.
Search. Dictate. Stephanie Hurd. Apple. Add app. There are airplane. Wi-Fi. Bluetooth. Cellular. Personal. Notific. Sounds and focus. Screen time. General. Control. Action. Display. Home screen. Accessibility.
Now, as you
button.
noticed, there's accessibility. It's quite a ways down, right? There was also, if you picked up on it at the top, there is a search bar and you could type in for something you're looking for. But we're not covering how to type with VoiceOver just yet. So we just kept flicking to the right till we heard accessibility, and then I'm going to double tap on that.
Vision, heading.
So I double tapped on that with one finger, and again, we'll dig into gestures in a bit. But it said vision heading. So that's, again, a heading is just a sign of where I am. Oh, I'm in vision. Great, I'm in the right area. So I'm going to flick to the right.
VoiceOver, on, button.
Okay, there's the VoiceOver button, and it says on. All right. You don't really want to be fooled by saying, oh, if I, tap that, or with VoiceOver on, you double tap, you turn it off. This is not a toggle of turning it off and on. There are actual settings under here. So I will double tap to actually open up VoiceOver and the settings within it.
VoiceOver speaks items on the screen.
Okay, and it just said VoiceOver speaks items on the screen. I'm going to flick right.
Tap once to select an item.
And I actually want to flick left again here. So I'm going to flick left with one finger.
VoiceOver, switch button, on.
Okay, VoiceOver switch button on. Here's where it is the switch button, right? The other said VoiceOver, meaning there are VoiceOver settings. This is a VoiceOver switch button, and it's currently on. If I double tapped here with one finger, I would turn it off. Okay, and again, I keep saying we'll get into gestures, and we will, but it's kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg? Should I show you how to slow down your speaking rate and turn on some hints first, which I do think are super important, because if you're starting off with VoiceOver too fast, how are you going to navigate? But then again, if you don't know how to do the gestures when you turn on VoiceOver, how are you going to navigate? It's which came first, the chicken or the egg. But in this case, I've chosen to come into the settings first. So that's where you could toggle to turn VoiceOver on or off. And so let's now flick to the right. I'm going to take you to the speaking rate. We want to adjust that speaking rate. That is really important when you're new to VoiceOver. It might be too slow. It might be way too fast, and we need to get that to be the speed you need. So let's just flick to the right till we hear speaking rate. We might hear other things, but I'm just going to keep going till we hear speaking rate.
VoiceOver speaks items on the tap once to select an item. Double tap to activate the select. Learn more. Link. VoiceOver practice. Button. Tip. Detection mode. Speaking rate. Heading.
There's speaking rate heading. So that is a great sign that I know next below that will be things about the speaking rate. So I'm going to flick to the right again.
Speaking rate, 50%, adjustable.
And it said 50% adjustable. Now I know from using VoiceOver that I could flick up or down to adjust this rate. Okay, I'm going to flick up with one finger.
60%.
And it will get faster. Flick up again.
70%. 80%.
And it gets pretty fast, right? And then I can flick down to slow it down. So flick down to slow it down.
70%, 60%, 50%.
Okay, I'll leave it on the 50% so that everybody has a fair shot at understanding this today. So that's really how you adjust that speaking rate when VoiceOver is on, okay? And that is, again, super important to be able to understand what it's saying. And the more you use VoiceOver, by the way, the speaking rate will seem a little slower, and you might want to come back in here and just, kick it up one to 60%, and then you kind of get used to that. As an example, I use about between 90 and 95% speaking rate for myself. But I didn't start that way. Nobody starts that way. So again, that is where you find speaking rate. Now, the next important thing is hints, because how would you know if you were new? Let's land on, I'm going to have us hear the speaking rate again.
Speaking rate, 50%, adjustable.
Okay, it says 50% adjustable. Well, okay. So how did I know to flick up or down, right? That's because I have what's called hints turned on. Speak hints. Okay, so we're going to go to verbosity inside these VoiceOver settings. So I'm just going to continue to flick right until I hear the word verbosity.
Speech, Braille, VoiceOver recognition, verbosity, button.
And there it is, verbosity. And it's a button, so I want to execute that or open it up. So I'm going to double tap with one finger, and we'll see what's in here.
Punctuation, button.
Okay, it throws you in most of the time what's at the very top. Occasionally it might throw you down a bit or where you left off if you didn't close the app, okay? But I'm at punctuation. Again, we're not going to cover everything we hear today. This is about the basics, getting started with VoiceOver. So I'm looking for hints inside verbosity. All right, so I'm going to flick to the right.
Customize how punctuation is output. Speak hints, switch button, off.
All right, so it said speak speak hints is off. So I want to turn that on. This is a toggle, meaning every time I double tap it with voiceover on, I double tap, it turns it on. If I double tap it again, it turns it off. If I double tap again, it turns it on, and so on. So I am going to double tap with one finger. It's like a dit, double tap.
On.
And now it's on. My speaking hints are now on. So let's go back.
Voiceover. Back button. Voiceover.
And
Verbosity.
let's hear what it's now going to say. If I go back on that speaking rate, and it said adjustable. Let's see if it says anything else now.
Voiceover. Braille. Speech. Speaking rate. 50%. Adjustable. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value.
Okay, so it said slide up or down with one finger to adjust the value. I like to use the word flick, and I'll explain why in a minute, but it's the same thing. If I slide up or flick up with one finger, it's faster. You know, it's adjusting the value of that, right? The numbers 50, 60, 70, or go down, 70, 60, 50. So now I got that hint because I turned hints on. Okay, so we're feeling pretty good. We've got the speaking rate, and we've got the hints on. I just want to show you one more thing before we get into gestures, and that is how to have a shortcut with VoiceOver, an accessibility shortcut, and have VoiceOver in there. Right now, I'm still inside my VoiceOver settings, so I need to go back a layer, back a level, and I'm going to find that back button. As you might know it visually, it's the arrow button, but it says if you could see enough and touch the arrow, it would say what that arrow really is. If you don't have the vision to do that, you're going to aim for the top left, about 1/4 inch down from the top left corner, and touch the screen.
Accessibility. Back button.
Okay, it said accessibility back button. So that's kind of like that arrow. And I'm going to double tap here to go back a layer.
Access. Voiceover. On. Button.
Okay, so now I just want to show you how you can make a VoiceOver shortcut. And that's by going to the bottom of this page.
Rows 9 to 20, rows 16 to 28 of 29.
So,
Cellular. KA1VG. Guided access. Assistive access. Siri. Accessibility shortcut.
there it is.
VoiceOver.
It's
button.
the next to bottom item for my phone on this accessibility screen. So it says again, let me land on it so you can hear it again.
Accessibility shortcut. VoiceOver.
Okay.
Button.
It says accessibility shortcut VoiceOver. So yours might just say accessibility shortcut. It might say accessibility shortcut magnifier. I don't know. It could say anything. But I think it's important to have a shortcut for VoiceOver because we use, Siri so much. And if something's not working properly, or we just need another method to quickly turn it on or off without speaking to it, we can use the power button on the right, the physical button on the right of your device. So not on the screen, but down the right edge of your iPhone. A lot of iPads, it might be on the top right. Okay, it just depends on your device. It could be a little different, but it's a long bar, and that's your power button. So it allows you to be able to push that button 3 times fast. So you're gonna click it in 3 times fast with it, pushing it in. And then the shortcut would come up. If you have one shortcut in there, it would execute it. You wouldn't have to do anything else. So I have just VoiceOver in here. If I triple pushed my side button, then it would turn off VoiceOver. If I triple push that side button again, it would turn VoiceOver back on. Now, the more items you have in an accessibility shortcut, it's going to then bring up a menu instead of just executing it. So if I had VoiceOver and magnifier in here, for example, as shortcuts, every time I triple tap the side button, a menu would come up, and then I would have to, pick which one do I flick to the right and tap on either magnifier or tap on VoiceOver. So it's an extra step in the process. It might be important to you to have 2 things in there, but the more you have in there, remember, you're not really, serving the purpose of having a shortcut. So I just have VoiceOver in here so that when I triple tap that side button, that's what it does. And so we're on accessibility shortcut, VoiceOver. So if I tapped on this on the screen, we're back to the screen now. If I double tap with one finger,
Reduce white
and
point.
open it up, here's a big list of things I could put in there. And it just will highlight it. You don't have to save it or anything. You just want to double tap to highlight it, to add it to the shortcut. And if you want to remove it, you would likewise, if it says selected in this list, you would double tap it to get rid of it as a shortcut. Let's flick to the right till we hear voiceover.
Reorder, reduce white, magnifier, smart, reorder, switch, voice, reorder voice control, select, reorder voice, selected, voiceover.
There's voiceover. And it says selected, meaning it's highlighted. It is my shortcut. Okay, if I wanted to take it out, I would double tap it. It would not say selected anymore. So that's the visual way, the voiceover way of saying something is highlighted. It will say it's selected. Okay, so I know that's in there. I can go back. So if I want to go, when I leave any app or a layer of an app, I like to go back to the main screen of that app before I close an app. Okay, so again, I have to get out of this layer of accessibility to go back to settings. So anytime you want, quote unquote, the left arrow or to go back a layer, you're going to touch about a 1/4 inch down from the top left.
Accessibility, back button.
Okay, and it says accessibility back button. I'm going to go back.
Accessibility shortcut.
Okay.
Voice settings, back button.
So I touch that top left corner again, about a 1/4 inch down. It says settings back button. I'm going to do it again. I want to go back to the main aspect to this app, the main screen of this particular settings app. So I'm going to double tap again.
Settings, heading.
Okay, and now I'm going to close the app. We'll get into that in a minute. I'm going to just close it for a second.
Weather.
And now
entertain.
I'm on my home screen. So let's talk about some basic gestures. Now that we know how to, we've slowed the speaking rate to our liking. We know the long way to find voiceover on or off. We've turned on the hints, which will help us to give us ideas what we need to do when using our device. And we added a shortcut with a side button. Okay, now let's talk basic gestures. So a one-finger touch. If you ever used Vision and didn't use VoiceOver, if you just touch your screen, you open the app that you touch, right? Whatever you touch, it opens. But you don't want that to happen with VoiceOver because you presumably can't see where you are and you have to hear it before you can do anything, because what you hear is where you are. What you hear is what is selected and what is where you are, to then make a choice to engage with it, open it, or whatever you want to do, okay? So you have to be able to touch it without things opening. So I'm going to randomly, with VoiceOver on, I'm going to randomly touch my screen with one finger, and you'll hear that.
iTunes Store. Double tap to open. Books folder, 12 apps. Double tap to open. Games folder, 15 apps. Double tap to open.
Okay, so, you're just hearing me randomly touch my apps, and it tells me, if it's a folder, it tells me how many apps are in it. And then it gives me the hint, double tap to open. If I didn't have those hints on, it wouldn't say that, and you might forget what you need to do in some scenarios. So that seems pretty illogical, though, to just randomly touch your screen, correct? So the best way to approach any new page, whether it's a website, whether it's your apps and you're not familiar with how you have them set up, and going to the top of your email list, things like that. I recommend starting again from about a 1/4 inch down. I'm really bad at math. Touch about a 1/4 inch down from the top left on the screen and just touch the screen.
Weather, Portsmouth.
40. Okay, so it told me my weather app. Okay, that's the first one on my screen. Right. So if I want to move ahead, these are what I call universal gestures to approach, your phone. If I want to hear my other apps, okay, and move ahead, because I say I don't want my weather app, I want to go to my books app. Well, of course, you can ask Siri to open any app. We talked about that. But today, this series, this is session 1, right? Lesson 1 on all about an introduction to VoiceOver. So this is how you would manipulate your screen using VoiceOver. So we want to move ahead, and this is true whether you're in a list of all your emails or a list of, something on a website, a web page, your, Future Insights web page. You want to get to the top so you don't miss out on any of the information, or your apps. It thinks of it when VoiceOver is on as a list. even though in this case you're on your apps and they're in a grid, so they have like columns and rows, okay? They're in a grid going across, and then you would jump down to the second row and go across, and then it jumps down to the third row and goes across. It doesn't tell you that when you flick to the right to move ahead or down a list. It just automatically does it, okay? In lesson 2, we're going to talk about, sneak peek here. Lesson 2 will be about organizing your apps, creating folders, deleting apps, moving them around so you know where they are, and et cetera, et cetera. So, but to orient yourself to the screen, we're at the top left. If I flick to the right, and it doesn't matter anywhere on the screen, I can do this. Once I've heard it say the weather app, that was my first app, I can start flicking to the right anywhere, and I'll move ahead, because what I hear is where I am. Not where my finger is, but what I hear at this point, because I already heard the weather app. I can flick to the right, and that gesture is one finger. Okay, so I typically use my index finger, and not up on the nail, but just below on the pad of your finger, and make little short flicks to the right. It's not a long slide. It's not a long drag. It's just a little shush the crumb out of the way, that kind of thing. Oop, little crumb, shush it out of the way. So that's why the best word I like is flick. So we're going to flick to the right with one finger. And let's do that.
Carnival Hub. Double tap to open. Photography folder, 4 apps. Double tap to open.
Okay, I'm continuing to flick to the right.
Reminders. Double tap to open.
Okay, and it even gives me that hint, double tap to open. Now, if I want to go backwards, right? Oh man, I went past the weather app. I meant to open the weather app. That's the one I wanted. I can just to go backwards or up a list. Whether, you might be in a list of emails and you went past the person you really wanted to open their email. To go backwards in any list, including your list of apps, you can flick left. So it's from right to left, okay? It's that, not a slide, not a drag. It's, again, that little on the pad of your finger, that little shushing the crumb, flicking it to the left. So we're flicking toward the left. I'm going to do that now.
Photography folder, 4 apps. Carnival Hub. Double tap to open. Weather, Portsmouth.
Okay, so there's my weather app. That's my first app. Well, you might say, how do you know it's your first app? Well, one way you can tell if you're at the top or the beginning of a list and there's no more information for you, flick again, and you will hear this little bong sound along with it. Let's do that. Listen.
Portsmouth. 43. Portsmouth. 43. Portsmouth.
I kept flicking to the left. I did that 3 times. I kept flicking to the left. Each time, did you hear that little bong noise? That tells me and indicates there's no more apps before this. Or it might indicate, there's no more emails before this. It would do the same thing if you were, flicking to the right and going forward or down a list. If you were at the end, it would, give that bong noise at the end of the announcement with that last item. Okay? So we know that what we touch will announce where we are. It's highlighted, and we can then make a choice. Do we want to flick to the right and move ahead or go backward? But now maybe we want to open something. How do we actually open an app? Well, I did mention that you can open any app, right, by asking Siri. But now we're talking about we want to open something up. So maybe I want to open my books folder, right? That's a folder. I have multiple different book apps inside a book folder. So I could open books with Siri, but then, and I could open the app inside books with Siri. So, but this is all about VoiceOver, and I'll show you another circumstance after this. But let's flick to the right until we hear books.
Carnival Hub. Double tap to open. Photography folder, 4 apps. Double tap to open.
Now, I don't have to wait for that announcement to keep flicking right. I can move a little faster just till I hear the word books. I don't have to hear everything this says. So I'm going to flick to the right a little faster.
Reminders. Social folder, calendar, entertainment folder, news folder, books folder.
Oh, and there's
12
books.
apps. Double tap to open.
Okay, there's books. All right. And it gave me the hint because my hints are on double tap to open. So I will take one finger, So remember the touch, if you touch with one finger, it just says what it is and it kind of highlights it. It selects it because it's telling you that's where you are. I can lift my hand off the screen, my finger off. I don't have to touch anything. I could go pour myself a cup of coffee. I could, answer the door. As long as I don't touch anything else on this screen, or I don't have my screen to set to lock real quick, right? As long as nothing else happens on my screen, I can come back and I'm still, what I last heard was books. So I don't have to be on that little icon. I can touch anywhere on the screen. I can double tap to open it. So if you want to open something or execute it, right, to activate it, you're going to take that one finger up on the pad of the finger and go dit, dit, right? It's a dit, dit, quick gesture, okay? So I'm going to do that now.
Opening books folder. Home. Books. Heading.
Okay, give me the heading.
Double tap and hold to start edit mode.
Okay, it gave me a heading. It even gave me other hints. We'll get into the second lesson about editing mode. But I could just flick to the right now and hear my books that are in this folder.
Books. Audible. Double tap to open.
There's Audible.
Voice Dream Reader. Double tap to open. Kindle. Double tap. Bard Mobile. Double tap to open.
So I was just flicking to the right, moving ahead in my list of book apps. If I wanted to open one, then I would double tap on it. So again, I'm on the Bard app, which is a book app we can get into learning about in the future. But for today, I'm going to double tap on this app to open it up.
Bard Mobile.
Okay.
A dream of...
Now I'm inside the Bard mobile app. All right. So we've talked about, touching to identify, right? Selecting it. We've talked about flicking to the right to move ahead, flicking to the left to move backward. And we've talked about double tapping to open things up or activating them. Now let's talk about closing apps. This could be a little bit different depending on your device. If you have a circle button, a physical circle button at the bottom of your phone, if you're holding it portrait style, up and down, or your iPad, you'll have if you have a physical home button, it'll be a circle, an actual button at the bottom. If you push that lightly once, that will take you back home to the home screen, okay? And just lightly once. And we'll talk about other things in the future too, about the difference between closing an app and closing it in the app switcher. There's a difference, and I'll define that in the future. But for today, we're just closing it to go home. And that means pressing lightly on the home button, once lightly. Okay, you can't ask, unfortunately, Siri to close the app. So if you don't have a physical button on your screen, then you're going to have to slide up, okay? And it is a slide up from the very, 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 very bottom. You can actually feel the bottom edge start at that point. And it's a light slide. And you're going to hear and feel kind of two very light noise / vibrations. They are very subtle. So I call it like bloop, bloop. When you hear bloop, bloop, you're going to let go. All right? So let's do that.
Bard Mobile.
Okay?
Double tap to open.
And then it took me out of Bard Mobile, right? Now I've got to close again this app to go home. So I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to slide up from the very, very bottom, and I'm going to hear bloop, bloop, and then I'm going to let go.
Closing books folder.
Okay.
Weather. Portsmouth.
So now I'm back on my home screen. So that is how you close apps, just to get to the home screen. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and we've learned how to, we can open an app with Siri. We can turn on Voiceover with Siri. We know how to go in the long way and find Voiceover to turn it off that way. Settings, and then accessibility, and then Voiceover. And then double tap the Voiceover switch to turn it on or off, right? Then we know how to adjust the speaking rate in Voiceover. Settings, accessibility, Voiceover, and then speaking rate. You can also, inside there, go to verbosity, open that up, and you can turn your hints on. We also know that if we just go to settings, accessibility, and then go down to accessibility shortcut, we can turn on add voiceover as a shortcut for that side button, power button on the right, the side button. And then we talk gestures, right? Basic gestures, tapping to identify, tapping twice with one finger to open it up, to execute it, activate, flicking to the right, flicking to the left. Let me show you in my emails the ability to flick right and left and how that works before we're done. So I'm going to, you could ask Siri to open your emails.
Doc, mail.
Or you could just open your mail.
Exchange.
And I'm going to go to
Gmail. Alternate. Select messages.
Okay. I wanted to quickly go to, I have an alternate account with not as high, important type of emails. So again, I opened up my email. You could do that by asking Siri to open mail. If you use Gmail, I believe you would need to say open Gmail. Okay. Then you're going to open up your email, and hopefully it'll be in your inbox. That's typically where it would throw you in unless you've been somewhere else. But we're in our inbox for today's purposes. And then how do you get your bearings? How do you get at the top of your email list? You don't want to randomly touch emails. Again, to get your bearings, you start about a quarter of an inch down from the top left.
Alternate back button.
And that's that alternate back button. This email is called alternate. I named this email alternate. That's why it's saying that. So if I wanted to go back out of this and find other emails that I have, like I have a Gmail account and a Comcast, that kind of thing, I would back out of this. But I'm at the top left, so that's great. It's a good orientation landing place. Now I can flick to the right. I want to get to my list of emails, and I do that by flicking to the right.
Edit button.
Notice you're going to hear some other things first. That's okay. You're always going to hear some things like edit, dictate, search, those kinds of things before you get into your list of emails. So just keep going and know that you will get there. So flick to the right again.
Inbox, heading.
Okay, there's my inbox heading. Oh, I am in the right place. I'm inside my alternate email in my inbox because the heading is the sign of where I am. Flick to the right again.
Search field.
Okay, I could search.
Dictate button.
I could dictate.
Messages, unread. Reagan reports.
Okay.
Unread. Halera. 2 for $24.
That's a shopping
leggings,
one.
9:05 a.m. Deal of the month.
So that's a shopping app, So here's my list of emails. I'm going down them by flicking to the right. I'll do it some more.
Unread. Sentinel and unread. Walmart Black Friday. Unread. Walmart Black Friday. Unread. Walmart Black Friday. Unread. D more via NH. Unread. D more via N. Unread. Sentinel and Enterprise.
So I get a lot of junk emails and emails also from the same people. So I can't, I hold no responsibility for any emails you hear here. So if I wanted to open an email, I would double tap on it. Let me find just an ad.
Unread. All recipes the scoop.
Okay.
Magical egg salad. 10/27/23.
Here's a recipe.
Magical egg salad. This is
okay. Here's a recipe one email. So again, it's a universal gesture. If I want to activate it or open it up, I double tap with one finger, which I'll do.
Select message header. This message content. All recipes. Link. Image.
Okay, so there's a lot in here because it's kind of
an orange background.
This is sort of a recipe / ad, where you can get on their website for a lot of links and stuff too that goes beyond what we're talking about today. But I could flick to the right.
Click. Link. Magical egg salad. Link. This is absolutely the best egg salad I have ever had. It has the perfect balance of ingredients. My break today.
So, I can flick to the right and work my way down this message. All right. And if I flick left.
Magical egg salad. Link. Click. Link.
So I'm going backwards in this email and what's there. Okay. Then if I want to go back to my emails, I'm done with this particular, inside an email, right? This recipes message. I'm done with it. I want to go back to the list of all my emails. I look for that back button, alternate back button.
Inbox. 654 unread messages.
So it says inbox, back button. It says inbox and a whole bunch. I have over 600. That's because there's a lot of ads in this email client that I use. This particular alternate address is kind of my, secondary. So it says inbox with a bunch of numbers of unread messages and then back button. I'll do it again.
Inbox. 654 unread messages. Back button.
Okay, so there's that back button, the arrow, what people are used to, right? So you have to be a good listener. You got to let it complete its thought, what it's saying, and then you'll know whether you need to execute it or not. So inbox back. I want to go back to my inbox. Of course I do. Yes. How do I activate that? I double tap.
Inbox. Messages.
And now I'm in my list of all my emails, okay? Well, I'm done with email, so I want to close my email. I have to close this email app by, if you have a home button, this is where there is a difference. If you have a circle home button, a physical button, you want to press that lightly once to go home. Otherwise, if you don't, you have to slide up from the very bottom, touch the bottom edge, and then slide up lightly, and you'll hear blip, blip, and then let go.
App switcher. Mail.
Okay,
Active.
and I went too far, so I'm getting out of that. Okay.
Doc. Mail. iTunes.
I don't want to get ahead of our lessons. So I closed it out.
Weather. Ports.
And we know we're on our home screen because we hear some apps that are familiar, like the weather and all that. Okay. So that kind of wraps up a lot of that. The other thing I just want to mention that I get asked a lot is, how do I answer and end a call, when I have voiceover on? And there are different ways to do this now. Siri's made an improvement on it, but I'm not going to discuss that yet. That's for a Siri, series. For a voiceover, if you have voiceover on and you need to answer a call, when this only works when voiceover's on, right? Everything we've talked about, remember. So when voiceover's on, you get a call coming in, you take 2 fingers. This is the only gesture we've added another finger to today. You take 2 fingers, keep a little space between them so that it's 2 fingers. Doesn't have to be like super wide, just a little space. And the reason is, if you have them like pinched together tight, it'll think it's 1 finger gesture, right? So we need to have a little bit of space, 2 fingers, and double tap. So it's 2 finger double tap. If a call comes in, you would just go dit dit, and you could answer, and then the call would open up. You'd hear them, hello, how you doing? Okay. Talk to you later, bye. Now, if they end the call, fine, but I know a lot of people say, I just asked the other person to end the call because I don't know how with voiceover on. Guess what? It's the same exact gesture as answering the call. 2 finger double tap anywhere on the screen. So 2 finger dit dit, and it will end the call, okay? So same gesture. 2 finger double tap to answer a call, 2 finger double tap to end a call. Okay, and that wraps up lesson 1 in our series on an introduction to voiceover. I hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to practice. I always give people the recommendation, you don't necessarily, if practicing for an hour can be burnout, right? You don't want to practice for an hour and then not practice for a week. You'll forget things. Generally you're not going to have time to practice for an hour every day. That's really not practical. I suggest you practice for 10 to 15 minutes, but every day. If you practice 10 to 15 every day, you will advance. You will make improvements over time. Give yourself patience and time as well as the commitment to practice, and you will move on in these sessions. And you have it here to review as many times as you wish. And remember, lesson 2 will be all about organizing our apps, right? Putting them in folders or deleting apps, moving apps, and being able to have a real handle on what we want where on our device. So thanks for joining in on an introduction to VoiceOver lesson 1. I hope you have a fabulous day.
KA1VGA